سلام، امیدوارم کارتون خوب باشه. امروز میخوام شما رو ببرم به قلب شهر استکهلم و کاخ پادشاهی سلطنتی سوئد در منطقه تاریخی گاملا استان، اگه درست گفته باشم. و این کاخ در سال 1697 ساخته شده تا سال 1754 که دیگه تموم شده ساخت و سازش. و الان قسمتی از این مجموعه به عنوان موزه مورد بازدید کنندگان هستش و 11 تا طبقه داره، 6000 تا اتاق داره و مراسم تعویض گارد سلطنتی هم که هر روز اجرا میشه و فیلمش هم گذاشتم. رژه گارد سلطنتی هم میتونید از این لینکی که تو بالا میذارم ببینید، اونجا برگزار میشه. من به همراه یک توری رفتم که به صورت انگلیسی تور لیدر توضیح میداد و برای شما هم فیلم گرفتم. امیدوارم که ببینین، خوشتون بیاد و اگر نظری داشتین برای من بنویسین، اگرم لایک کنین که خوشحالم میکنین.
Hier kommen wir zum Schluss auch
Ja.
nochmal hin. Ne? Gucken wir vielleicht, dass wir zu der Tour kommen.
Ja.
Brauchen wir wieder unser Ticket. Ticket holders.
And I usually start with showing a picture of the whole royal family. So we have the king and the queen, King Carl XVI Gustav and Queen Sylvia sitting in the middle, surrounded by all of the children, children-in-law, and grandchildren. And the king and queen don't live here at Stockholm Palace anymore. They used to live here until 1981. But then, when they had their children, they moved out to Drottningholm Palace to raise their children outside of Stockholm, and they still live there today. But Stockholm Palace, this is still the official residence of the king. So this is where he has his offices, and this is where new ambassadors who come to Sweden come to have an audience with the king before they're allowed to work here. And the big state dinners and state visits also take place here at the palace. And here we have the line of succession. So after the king, we will have Crown Princess Victoria, and after her, her daughter Estelle. So at least two queens after. And behind me, we have one of the most important symbols of Sweden, the silver throne, which you can see up here under the canopy. This has been the throne of Sweden since 1650, when it was used for the coronation of Christina. And this was a gift to her coronation from her friend, a nobleman, Magnus Gabriel de la Gardie. It weighs about 40 kilos.
How many?
And, sorry?
40 kilos.
40 kilos, whereof about 30 kilos is silver. And if we look closer at the details at the top of the chair, we can see the three crowns symbol of Sweden in the middle. This is an addition from the 1700s. So it used to be a C, a crown cipher for Queen Christina here in the middle. And then these two ladies, they are personifications of different virtues. So the woman to your right, this is truth with a mirror. And this one is justice, Justitia. She has a sword and a scale. And for some reason, the Swedish throne has been copied in Hollywood, and it's been in a few movies. So we have the Joker in the Tim Burton movies sitting on the Swedish throne with justice and truth next to him. And I believe the throne is in the 2005 movie Charlie and the Chocolate Factory as well. But this room that we're in right now, this is what it could have looked like in the late 1700s. This is from a painting when Parliament met here. So the king would sit at the front of the room, and then the four estate of society sat in front of him. So you had the nobleman closest, the priests, the bourgeoisie or the mercantile class, and then at far back the peasant class. And it was used for parliament between 1755 and into the 1800s, when a new parliament building was made. But it has still been used for the opening ceremony of parliament even after that. So until 1974, this room used to be used for opening of parliament. So our king today, he became king in 1973. This is from his ascension. So he didn't have a coronation, so he's not wearing the crown, but the crown sits next to him on a pillow instead. And he got to open parliament from here one time, 1974. And then they changed the law. The power is supposed to come from the people, and he only has a role where he doesn't have any political power. So nowadays, the opening of parliament takes place in the parliament building, and the king goes there instead. And after that, this room has been used for a few dinners. So this is from the wedding dinner of Crown Princess Victoria in 2010. There were fresh flowers put up the same day on the walls in here. There's also been a few exhibitions and concerts in here as well. And just last year we had another big dinner in here. So the king celebrated 50 years on the throne last year. And we also had 500 years since Gustav Vasa made us free from Denmark as well. So it was a double jubilee year. And that's when we had these flags put up as well with the historical regions of Sweden. And there was this big dinner in here as well. And I'll talk a little bit about the architecture in this room, but we will get back to that when we get into the state apartments as well. But just for here, I will mention two important architects for the Stockholm Palace. We have Tessine, who was schooled in the Baroque style of the 1600s. He studied in France and Italy, and he's the one who planned the Stockholm Palace. He wanted this room to feel like a courtyard, which was a good place to have meetings. So that's why we have these rows of half columns. But then under the ceiling, he wanted big Atlanteans, big men holding up the ceiling. But if you look up, you can see children and women. So this is an addition in the 1700s by the next architect, Carl Håleman. He was schooled in the style of the Rococo period of the 1700s, and he wanted personifications of virtues and of society. So you have, for example, Justice sitting here with her sword and her scale, the same woman as on the silver throne. And with that introduction, I think it's time to go up into the royal apartments. So we'll make a quick stop here, so make sure that you stand somewhere you can hear me, and that you can have a look at the shields somewhere in here. They are on a lot of the walls, so you can stand at different places. I just said stand somewhere you can hear me, so come closer if needed. Let's see, do we have the whole group now? Can you hear me at the back there? Yeah? Good. So we'll make a quick stop here. This is the Hall of Orders, where after your tour you have an exhibition you can have a closer look at if you're interested in the royal orders. But just for now, I'll mention we have 4 royal orders, and the finest one is the Order of the Seraphim. And these shields that you see in this room, they are the shields that are made for people who are given this order. Nowadays, only members of the royal family and heads of states of other countries can be given this order. And on the wall behind me here, you can see a lot of the members of, for example, the Swedish, Norwegian, and British royal families. And when people who have been given this order pass away, the shields are moved in a ceremony down to Riddarholm Church, where they are put up. So down there you can see the shields of people who have passed away who have been given. Let's make some space behind us so other visitors can move past. And one of the royal orders is called the Order of Vasa. And this order, for example, has recently started being given out to common people as well, common people of Sweden. So the 31st of May, for example, the band ABBA got this order. And we'll end the tour in the room, and I'll show you a picture from when they got their orders. So now we'll walk through the Hall of Orders, and we'll go upstairs and continue there.
Das auch, ja. Ja. 2001. Evet. Ja, mitreißen noch hier.
Was steht nicht mit drauf?
Wenn wir zurückkommen. Mama.
Let's see, is there anyone who's missing someone from their group? No? All right. And remember to come a bit closer as well if you need to, because of the acoustics in this room as well. I like to stop here and point out a few details in the interiors. So this staircase was planned by the first architect I mentioned, Nicodemus Tessin the Younger. I'll show a picture of the architects here. Let's see. There we go. So the man at the front depicts Nicodemus Tessin the Younger, and he's handing over symbolically the work of Stockholm Palace to the second architect, Carl Wåhleman. So he planned this staircase in the Baroque style, but he didn't get to see it finished. It was finished with the second architect, Carl Wåhleman, and then later additions in the 1800s has been made as well. So up here, you can see this side was used as the king's floor, And this side was used for the prince. And if you look at the flower garland above the three crown symbol, you can see that on this side it's symmetrical, while on the other side you have a little bit of this rococo asymmetry in here.
What was that side? This was inside and that was
The prince. And nowadays this is used as the state apartment, so this is where we have the big parties, dinners take place on this side, for example. And on this side we have the guest apartments. So when we have visiting heads of state, they can decide if they want to stay here at the guest apartments or at a hotel. And if they stay at the guest apartments, there are guards in ceremonial 1600s uniforms outside. And some of these guards have halberds or spears in their hands. So you can see marks on the floor outside here. You can have a closer look later on when you enter the guest apartments and you see the marks from the halberds. And we have one of the latest state's visits. Here you can see the table, and we'll get to this room later on. So we had a Danish and a Finnish state visit this year, for example. And I believe the Finnish president, Alexander Stubb, stayed here at the guest apartments, while the Danish royal stayed at their boat instead. So there's a third option there as well. But now we're going to enter the state apartments, and if you feel like you will have to sit down or lean against something, you have chairs just to your right of the door there to bring with you. Continuing to the second room after, if you grab a chair first. So here you can see two models of Stockholm Palace, and I believe this one is more recognizable. We are about here right now, on the western side of the palace. So in the 1600s, in the 1660s about, this is what Stockholm Palace used to look like. This was a palace that had been continually built until from the medieval ages until the 1600s. So this tower, for example, which was used to be called Three Crowns, and that's left from the medieval period. And then as they needed more and more offices and places for living, it continually was built into the 1600s. This nowadays might be considered very pretty, or like a Disney palace. But in the 1600s, this was very out of style. This was more modern in the 1600s than this. So there were different plans during the 1600s that they wanted to rebuild the palace. Nothing came to fruition until the 1690s, when the king Carl XI, you can see as a sculpture over there, he decided that they could rebuild this side, the northern side of the palace. And the architect Nicodemus Tessin, the younger, got the order to rebuild this one. But they still used the old walls. So if you go down into Museum Three Crowns after the tour, it's underneath us on this side of the palace. You can see what's left of the old medieval palace. And they were 2 floors more built above this side. And then later, or lower down in lower levels, they just put the facade of the palace outside what was already there. And then 7th of May, the year 1697, a fire broke out. And at that time, the palace would have looked something like this, with the new addition, Bajtesin, to the north, and the old palace behind it. And they had started making the interiors as well. Bajtesin hired French craftsmen to start working on the, for example, the state apartments here. But a fire broke out. It started close to the Hall of State, which at the time was about here. And it was quite common with fires at this time, so they had fire guards walking around the attics, usually. But this day, the superior of the fire guards, he had sent one of the guards into the city to get some silks for his wife, and the other fire guard had gone down into the kitchen to grab something to eat. And then a woman sitting close to the Hall of State noticed the smell of smoke. And when they sent one of the fire guards up, the fire had already broken out and it had spread too far already. It said that in about half an hour, a lot of the rooms had been already filled with smoke, so they had to get out quickly. And the cannons in the tower started falling down the floors and falling into the wine cellar at the bottom. And then, the next day, a lot of the palace had burnt down. But if you look at this picture, you can see that the northern side had made it out quite well from the fire. So they could have rebuilt what was here if they wanted to, but they took the chance to make a new palace instead. So Tessin got the orders to make building plans for a new palace, and in just 6 weeks he had completed his building plans. And he believed it would be finished quite quickly. But it took about 60 years until someone could move into the palace. So he didn't get to see it finished. And it said he wanted this to feel like a Roman villa inside of Stockholm. And he wanted it to be symmetrical, but the Stockholm Cathedral was in the way on this side. So he had to cover it up with these curved buildings at the front. And then in 1754, the royals could move into the palace, and they moved into the floor below us, the Bernadotte apartments, it's called today. And from 1755, the Hall of State was used for Parliament for the first time. And the palace has been a few different colors over the years as well. So it started with a brick red, it's been yellow, and in the late early 1900s, it was brown, fit together well with the new Parliament building. And nowadays it's supposed to be a warm pink. So you can have a look outside if you feel like it's pink or maybe it's still brown. So now we're going to enter the northern side. And since on this side you still have the old palace to work from, the walls are quite thicker than on the other sides. So if you look in the windows, you can notice a bit of a difference on that side. So let's move into the next room.
Das alte war schön.
Ja.
Außen.
We have the whole group in here, right? Yes. now in the council chamber. And this room is still used for meetings with the government and the king today. So this picture, which I'm showing, it is the cabinet of ministers, the king and the crown princess after our latest parliament election. So when they were the new cabinet of ministers. And these kinds of meetings used to take place every week before 1974, when the law was changed. After that, it's a few times a year, where the ministers inform the king about what's happening in politics and in their different departments. And also, of course, after a new parliament election, then the new cabinet of ministers meet the king. And the king became king quite young, so he wanted Crown Princess Victoria to have a better chance of getting ready for her duties before she would become queen. So she sits in on these meetings as well. And when that started happening, he had to find a chair for her. So you can see the king's chair to the right is the biggest. These ones for the cabinet of ministers are the smallest. And the crown princess is in the same neo-rococo style, but it's between the king's and the cabinet's insides. And there used to be meetings and dinners here before as well. So this is from the late 1700s. New Year's party here. So the king at that time, Gustav III, he liked having big public dinners where they could have up to 32 courses, and only the royal family were allowed to eat. So other visitors were allowed here as well, but they got to watch the royal family eat. But there was a second dinner that day as well, with at least 26 courses, where others got to eat as well. So almost as fine as a royal dinner. But if you look at this picture, you see that it looks quite different from today, the interiors. So this room was changed in the late 1800s to be the neo-Baroque style. So they brought back the Baroque style in here. But some, or a lot of the furniture in here is older than the 1800s. For example, we have these big woven tapestries on the walls, and these are from 16 and 1700s. Some of them are made in France at Le Gobelin, but others are made in Sweden. So for example, the one in the corner there, this was made at school for orphan girls that the queen at that time constructed for them to learn a new craft. And otherwise in here we have a lot of sculptures. We have the line of kings of the Bernadotte family. So after Gustav III, who I mentioned, king in the late 1700s, his son became king, he was removed in a coup, and then to make a long story short, they had to find a new heir for Gustav III's brother, who had become king. They looked to a Danish prince, he fell off his horse and died, and then they looked to France instead, and we got the Bernadotte family. The first one over here, Carl XIV Johan. You can see him as well on his horse on this portrait over here. And then we have the line of succession after him going in this direction with Oscar I, Carl XV, Oscar II, Gustav V, and then we're out of order. So we look closer at these two sculptures over here. So here you have a king today called the 16th Gustav, and this bust was added just last year for the Jubilee. And now it's 11 o'clock. Alright. So we have his grandfather, who was king before him, over here. Gustav VI Adolf. And the late king, he wanted the sculptor Peter Linde to be careful with two details. He said, do not beautify me, and pay attention to my tie. So if you look closer, you can see that the tie is slightly crooked. So it seems like Peter Linde listened to him. in his wishes. And now we're going to skip a room again, and we'll stop at the room after that. It's fine? Yes. Alright. So this room was the state bedchamber of Gustav III. And with a bed, it would have looked something like this. The bed was removed because the department that takes care of the furniture wasn't sure that it was the original one, so they didn't want it to look up here. But with the bed here, and especially with the canopy, we would have a royal area separated from the public one, and as well with the balustrade here, marking the difference. And this was needed because Gustav III, he brought guests into his bedchamber, and he brought a French court custom called le lever to Sweden, where he would have guests in here, and they got to watch him get up in the morning and get dressed. And no other Swedish kings have taken part in this custom, only Gustav III. You can see him here as well, as a sculpture. You can see how much time we have. I'll skip that, and we'll look up into the ceiling here. So you can look at this picture if you want for the light, but I'll point out with my flashlight as well what you're supposed to be looking at. I'll show you this picture, and then I'll point out a few details in my flashlight as well. So this is a ceiling painted by the French artist Jacques, and this whole room has a theme summer. So the theme was inspired by Versailles. We wanted in the middle to have the gallery, and on this side have seasons, on the other side the elements. This Swedish palace is smaller than the French one. We have 2 rooms instead of 4 for both the seasons and elements. So we have summer in here. And we have Minerva sitting with the Swedish king. We have Hercules over here with his club. And he's fighting personifications of vices, which are men here falling out of the painting. And if you look in the corner over here, you see this man here. This is the vice idiocy, and he has donkey ears as his symbol. But otherwise, around this ceiling, we have a lot of women sitting here as well, and these are fine arts. But they didn't have enough fine arts, so they had to add a few as well. But we have one of the common fine arts here, sculpture. And then one of the funny added ones over there is mechanics. So she has a clock in her hand here. And we're going to look at another one of these allegorical ceilings at the next stop. But I can mention you here that you remember the whole stage where it started? The ceiling there was a light blue. It's supposed to feel like a summer sky. But if it had been completed according to the Baroque architect Designe's plan, it would have had something more like this in the ceiling, an allegorical painting with a lot of symbols for virtues or vices, or maybe the Greek Roman gods. So let's continue into the middle of the next room.
Das ist durchdacht.
Over here as well, so let's see, that should be the whole group, right? So this picture that I'm showing right now, if you look up into the ceiling, it might look quite similar. but this picture depicts a ceiling at Versailles. So it's not the one here, but it's the inspiration for the one we have here. But in the Swedish version, you can see the Swedish king, who was Carl the 11th at this time, so we're in the late 1600s, he's standing here. And during his time, Sweden fought a lot against what you could say our biggest enemy. Let's go a bit closer so other guests can pass by. So anyone has any guesses to Sweden's biggest enemy during the 1600s? Denmark, exactly. So this whole gallery depicts the wars between Sweden and Denmark. And an area of southern Sweden that we fought over a lot was Skåne. So this woman in blue and red here, she symbolizes Skåne. So the Swedish king is pointing towards Skåne, and between them we have a little boy with a snake biting itself in the tail. This is a symbol of eternity. So the Swedish king pointed towards Skåne, saying it will be part of Sweden for eternity. And you can see Carl the 11th as a sculpture as well, just under the ceiling up there. And he married a Danish princess who tried to keep the peace between the countries. And you can see her on the opposite side, you have her up there. So you have war symbols on that side and then peace symbols on this side. But nowadays, this is the room that's most often used for big dinners. And it can take up to 2 days to set the table. And of course, that's why sometimes the state apartments are closed. So a lot of the different rooms here are still used, and these ones are for dinners. And this is what it can look like with guests in here. So there are a few official representational dinners here a year, and one of them is for the Nobel Prize laureates. And the king starts and ends the dinners, and when he starts eating, everyone else is served their food, so he has to eat quite slow, so everyone else gets to finish their meal as well. And this room is sometimes used for parties for the royal family as well. So this was the wedding dance of Prince Carl Philip and Princess Sophia in 2013. And they didn't only have formal dancing in here. After the formal party, they had, I heard Avicii played here in the gallery. So this is from that evening. And now we have about 5 minutes left, so I think we should make one final stop, which is at the end of this floor.
Das ist bei diesen skandinavischen Königsversammlungen wie ganz sympathisch. Die sind halt nicht so, dass die sich so abheben wie in England. Aber was weiß ich, das kostet auch wie viel hunderte Millionen, das aufrechtzuerhalten.
Genau.
Milliarden wahrscheinlich.
Have the whole room? Is there someone missing? And can you hear me over the fan, or should I turn it off? It's okay, yeah. So now we're in what's called the White Sea. This is the biggest room we have here on the state apartments. And it used to be 2 rooms. So there used to be a guard's room up there, and this was used as a dining room. When there was a king and queen living here at the state apartments, the opposite side would be the king's floor, and this side was the queen's side of this apartment. but it was opened up in the 1800s to be used for dancing. So I have a picture here from the late 1800s. And it was opened up during the time of King Oscar I and Queen Josefina. So up on the music gallery up there, the balcony, you can see their crown ciphers. So you have the 3 crowns on the shield in the middle, and then to the left you have the king's, the O, and to the right you have the queen's crown cipher. And this room is still used today as well. So this is the wedding dance of Crown Princess Victoria and Prince Daniel. So they had their dinner in the Hall of State and then their dancing here. Prince Carl Philip had his dinner here and then the dance in the gallery. And when there are big dinners in the gallery, the king and queen welcome the guests from this room, and then after the dinner it's used for socializing as well. And Prince Daniel, he came up with another sort of representational dinner for when the king turns 70, and this is called the Swedish dinner. So here you can see what that looks like. It takes place once a year, and on this dinner even common people from Sweden, from all around, can come to this dinner. People who have done something for example arts or sports the last few years. And I promised that we will end in the room where ABBA got their Orders of Vasa. So that's where we are right now. So this was on the 31st of May this year, where they got their Orders of Vasa in here. And with that, I want to thank you very much for coming on this tour. Since we were such a big group, I didn't stop for questions during the tour, but of course, after we've ended now, you can ask questions if there was something that I skipped past or so, or if you didn't get to see one of the pictures. But otherwise, I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.